Hey, this is Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys, and I love the Grandstanders! Take it away, kid!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Grandstanders Live. I'm your host, Scott Kerman. I'm joined by my usual cohorts, the Professor, Russ Stevens, and Uncle Joe McLaughlin. Well, we have a special guest sitting in the grandstand tonight. He's Nashua, New Hampshire's first son. He's was the play-by-play announcer for the Pittsburgh Pirates from 2009 to 2015. We know him as the Red Sox voice for the last 2 years on WEEI. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome to our show Tim Nevitte.
Oh, thank you for that dual applause there.
Do you still live in New Hampshire?
I actually do. I lived in Nashua. I moved back there in late August. I was living, believe it or not, just a block from Fenway. And in order to be closer to my parents, my family, it made sense to be up there, especially with the off season coming. And we spent the previous off season in the city, and it was great. And I love the city of Boston. Went to school here, and just love being in the city itself. But I'll tell you what, after games, especially some of those long games, I could be home with my feet up before my partner, Joe Castiglione, got out of the parking lot. So that was a good thing. But it's, I have to commute like everybody else now.
So you started your career as a 19-year-old for the Nashua Pirates.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about
Crazy.
that stadium. You have to. I emailed you. Was that kind of like a Shakespeare in the Round stadium? Do you remember that stadium?
Yeah, Holman Stadium. It's still used quite a bit now for a college all-star team that my brother actually manages.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and they play teams around New England, Martha's Vineyard, Worcester. Yeah, it's called the Futures League, and they've won the league the last 2 years, and they've had some great games with Worcester and some good players. A lot of players get drafted out of there, and a lot of Division I players. It's not the Cape League, but it's another option for guys. Okay. And originally, back in the 1940s, the Brooklyn Dodgers had their AAA team there.
Was that right?
So,
really?
yeah, so you had Don Newcomb, Roy Campanella played there. Jackie did not, because he went to Montreal.
That's right.
He was in Montreal. Yeah. And so that was just after. They had they moved their AAA operation from Nashua to Montreal. Yeah. And that's when Jackie got there. But so there's still a little history, and you can actually see a mural in one of the areas downtown of the old Nashua Dodgers and some of the players. But then they got the Angels back in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. The Angels had the Eastern League team there, AA team. Right. And then the Lynn Sailors then moved to Nashua and became the Nashua Pirates. And that's when I started broadcasting. I was still playing at the time, but I took the summer off from playing to work with the broadcasters, not knowing that I was going to be doing games. I thought I was going to be interning and getting the lineups and helping out. And next thing you know, these guys decided they wanted to take nights off. And here, why don't you try the middle innings? And I said, sure. I'm 19 years old. I'm like, I've never done this, but I've always wanted to. So I did a couple of innings, and the guy goes, hey, that's pretty good. He's not going to be here tomorrow night. You want to come back and do it again? And then this went on, and then by the 4th of July, I did both ends of a doubleheader by myself because both guys wanted to take the day off. So I started doing more and more of that, and it was funny because when I got through a long career before I got to the Pittsburgh Pirates, when it was announced I got the Pittsburgh Pirates job, the very first call I got, I mean, within minutes, was from a former Nashua Pirate.
Really?
Yeah, a gentleman by the name of Mike Berger who works in scouting. He was most recently with the Marlins and was just hired elsewhere. But he was the first guy that called me. And then my new partners were calling me, and other people started calling, and the phone rang for days. Yeah. But it was funny because I always found it odd that a former Nashville Pirate from 1985
That's awesome.
was the first guy to get me on the phone.
That's great.
Which was, it was neat. But it's a great little stadium. It's been upgraded quite a bit since you saw it.
Okay, all right. Hopefully.
They brought in the famous groundskeeper George Toma.
Oh, of course.
To
right.
redo the whole thing. And we see him down in Fort Myers because he works for the Twins. Oh. So every time we go see the Twins, there's George Toma out there working on the grass.
He's a legend. He's the only groundskeeper.
People know the name.
Right. He's probably been the answer of many New York Times crossword puzzle questions because he's the only one anyone knows.
So you get the job with the Pirates. So that was your call up to the major leagues in 2009.
It wasn't actually. Before that, I was with the Colorado Rockies.
Oh, you did? Okay, all right.
Yeah, and when I was working in Denver, I started working up for the regional television networks. The names changed, but it was FSN at the time.
Okay.
And I had been doing a lot of things for them, and they had me. They called me one day. Literally, the phone rings. And said, "Hey, our regular guy can't be there. What are you doing this weekend?" And I said, "What do you want me to do?" And the voice on the other end said, "Can you be in Arizona Friday morning to do the weekend series with the Diamondbacks?" I said, "Yeah, I'll walk if I have to." So anyway, I got myself there, and I came back with the team. So I did the weekend series, and then did a little more, and then they had me. They added me doing pregame, postgame on television, and did that for a while, and actually got a call from the Milwaukee Brewers in 2007 and was a finalist it was myself and the guy who's still doing the games. Yeah. So you know who got that job. And then 2 years later, it worked out where somebody called and said, "What do you know about Pittsburgh?" I said, "I don't know. It's got a lot of bridges and rivers." And they said, "Well, there's an opening, and we'd like to see you get it." And I said, "Okay." So I got in the running, and after all, I got the job there and really enjoyed my time there a lot.
Before we leave Pittsburgh, what do you think of the McCutchen trade? It's a fascinating trade where you've got a superstar, and all of a sudden he goes across country.
Well, we here in New England are very spoiled, first and foremost. Yeah. We should say that because we have different expectations being in the market we are. Where the Red Sox in the past, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Cubs, you need somebody, you go get them. $100 million, sure. They'll,
it's not my money.
Dig a little deeper in the couch, and the fans don't care. It's not their money. Yeah, go ahead and spend it. So, but when you're in a smaller market, in a market that when the current owner took over, they had a lot of financial difficulty. He made them solvent again, prevented that team from moving, which people forget, and is keeping the franchise going. They're profitable now. That is good. But
and built that beautiful stadium.
The stadium is wonderful.
Yeah.
It is wonderful.
It really is.
It's so great. If people haven't seen PNC Park, I really encourage you to.
I want to go to.
Man, you gotta go.
Yeah.
But as far as McCutchen goes, I wasn't surprised. I figured it was going to happen at some point in time because they just can't keep rolling. They have to go for windows of time that they can win. And the window that they had, fortunately, I was there to see it. They were there in the postseason 3 years in a row. 2013 might have been the best chance. Have that great wild card game with Cincinnati.
Great game. I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
How was that crowd?
It was
Johnny Cueto.
You know what? It was and there's no disrespect to any other crowd, especially around here. That's the loudest I've ever heard a baseball game in my entire life. It's one of the two loudest sporting events I've ever been to. The other was at the Olympics in Athens when the USA played Greece in basketball. It was indoors, 20,000. Of course, it's going to be loud, but the loudest outdoor crowd I've ever heard was on I think it was October 1st, 2013 at PNC Park.
That really just took me back.
And I don't know about you guys. I rooted like hell for the Pirates. All those years. I mean, you couldn't lie. It was just between the park and the players and the manager. It's just too easy to root for.
You mentioned the Cueto chant. It was really interesting because they started doing it, and Johnny's on the mound. And he drops the ball. He's facing Russell Martin. Right?
Remember that?
And the ball rolls down. Right. Now, of course, the fire marshal took the night off because there was over 40,000 in the stadium.
Right.
So he goes and picks the ball up, and now, I mean, buildings are shaking with the Cueto chant, and we're up there going, oh my goodness. And the very next pitch, Russell Martin puts in the left field seats for a home run. And then it got even louder. It was, I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. And you
Make the hair on the back of your neck stand.
and it did. And it did. I think not just for me, but for a lot of
Even
people.
on TV, it made it
Yeah,
happen.
it was absolutely incredible.
So as an announcer, did you try to stay silent at times and let the audience hear the crowd to try to get them into that feeling?
It depends on the medium because we did both television and radio. I did half the season on TV, half the season on radio in Pittsburgh. We would alternate games. So, and that was the postseason. So the local telecast wasn't on. So we split the radio, and I had the middle innings. There are times when you should lay out and let the background fill in. On radio, a little less of that. TV, a lot of it during the regular season. Guy hits a walk-off or something, you just sort of lay back and let the fans enjoy the pictures and sounds. But in this case, you really didn't need to say anything. You could tell.
Oh,
Great.
You could tell what happened. I mean, it was incredible.
Do you have a preference for TV or radio?
You know, I like television a lot. The radio is good, but I think it's more of an old school medium. I still do television in the off season quite a bit, but I do a lot of college events, basketball, hockey, and I do miss doing baseball on television. With the current configuration with the Red Sox, it is completely different than any other team and completely different than anything I've ever seen.
How so?
It's hard, really hard to explain how it is. I mean, the Nesson is here, WEEI is here,
I see.
and
Just
the Red Sox are
actual
here.
configuration,
Yeah, the
I
Red
see.
Sox don't have as much to do with it. They're involved to a point, but radio doesn't mix with TV.
Interesting.
You know, we had a situation last year in Detroit where Dave O'Brien got sick on the air. And,
Right, I remember that, yeah.
And he tried to give it a go again, came back, and they told him to go home. Now, what people don't know is that the producer for Nesson used to be our director in Pittsburgh. So he has a television history with me. And as I understood, he was trying to tell the guys back in Nesson, hey, we got a guy with a lot of Major League TV experience in the booth next door. And Nesson was like, nope. And my partner, Joe Castiglione, turns to me during a break and he goes, you better get over there. I said, I can't. How can I do that?
Yeah.
I said, I work for this company.
Right.
That's
another company.
Yeah, it's another company.
Yeah, the Red Sox
And they
own
let
Nesson,
Tom
and-
Curran do it from the,
Yeah.
if I remember, from the studio, right?
Yeah, but the thing about it is that that's just sort of how the thing is set up.
Yeah.
Could I have walked over there and done it? Absolutely. I was prepared. I was doing that actual game. I could have, and I've done games in Detroit many, many times, and not that matters, but it's just one of those things that just shows the difference between the Boston market and other markets. If it was Pittsburgh or if it was Colorado or if it was somewhere else, I would have just been able to get up and walk over there and continue doing the game. And
Joe would have taken over in the
yeah, it would have been easy. But
Because in
but
the
that's
Celtics,
just-
Maxwell sometimes will do the the TV.
Yeah.
From the radio side. They don't seem to have a problem with that.
yeah, and I just don't understand all the different nuances. But that was a thing where I got a lot of texts and phone calls after that game from friends of mine in baseball saying, "Where were you? Why didn't you move over there?" And I said, "I can't even explain
Just a
it."
different
I said,
ownership structure,
I
yeah.
don't know. I can't just do it on my own." And
Yeah, you'd be walking out of your job. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey,
so I couldn't do it.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So, because you said you announced hockey, I'm blown away by how Doc Emmerich announces a hockey
Yeah.
game. And I don't know what is it about how he does it that is so striking.
the thing is, I got to know Doc because he's a huge Pittsburgh Pirates fan.
Right.
And he used to send me emails, and then he'd come to spring training. He'd come to regular season games. I ran into him at a minor league game one night in Hershey, PA, and we talked for a while. Anyway, I've seen how he prepares, and he carries around a notepad, and he asks all kinds of questions, different questions other than hockey, which I think most people want to ask about. Your team. How's this guy? How's this? What's going on? He doesn't necessarily do that. He'll do that some, but he'll find out little bits and pieces that maybe nobody has, and he has that notebook with him, and he'll flip through it, and he'll get it into the game somehow. And he'll always get a Pirates reference into the game too. If
Is
you
that
listen
right?
to him.
I'm gonna have to listen.
Yeah,
to that.
listen
Yeah,
to
I'm
him.
gonna listen
I
to it.
guarantee
Yeah.
it. You
Mention it in an old
listen to
player
him,
or something. Yeah.
He'll get a Pirates reference in. But the other thing about it is that he is actually, he's an old-time writer.
Oh,
And he's a
okay,
teller
that
of
makes
stories.
sense. Yeah, the verbs he uses to describe a puck being dumped into the end.
Right.
90% of the guys will use the term dump, and he'll use some other verb.
Yeah, he'll say, it's feathered into the corner or something. He'll use colorful language, which
Yeah.
I think is great. And he is as good a hockey announcer as he is more of a wonderful human. He's a great guy.
It's great to hear.
He is a really, really good guy, and
Maybe that's what
wonderful.
comes through in his.
Oh, I mean, I'm just so
think
excited
so.
when he does. I'm sure you
No,
guys
yeah,
are too. When he
absolutely.
does a
Yeah.
game, when he does a Bruins game, you're just so excited.
He's
You get to
great.
listen to Doc Emmerich
He
for
really
a
is.
couple hours.
He
Yeah.
really is a lot of fun to be around.
All right, so of course, first of all, as an announcer, and first of all, local boy makes good. That's you know we love that stuff that you got the Red Sox job, and that had to be when you got that call, right? One of the most exciting moments of your career, absolutely. Right?
It was, but you know what? People wouldn't believe how it was. People
Was it your dream? Is it your dream job?
to do the Red Sox? I grew up following the Red
Right,
Sox.
so it is.
So yeah, I mean, and I thought I had my dream job with the Pirates. Right. So while this process was going on, the Pirates were aware, and I was keeping them aware. But I was in a really unique situation because I actually had a choice. I could have stayed in Pittsburgh, or I could have accepted this job. And it actually took me a while to do all the pros and cons. A lot of the reason I took this job was because my parents haven't been in good health.
Right.
So I'm home, and I live 10 minutes from them. So that was a big reason. Another big reason was it's the Red Sox. And to be honest with you, everybody I talked to that I consulted with around baseball and in sports broadcasting that I know said, you got to take the Red Sox job, with the exception of one, and that was my boss with the Pirates. And I had a conversation with him about it again recently, and he reminded me of that. But I didn't just scream yes like you'd expect a New England kid to do. Because this is a business and because it's a career, there's a lot of things that had to be thought about and a lot of things that had to be put into place. So it took a little bit before. I actually read my name in the paper as being hired when I hadn't accepted the job yet, and didn't for maybe 2 weeks after that.
That's very interesting.
And
That's
I was
good. Maybe your
they
agent
wanted you.
should have asked
Well, I know
for
they
more.
wanted you. They wanted you to commit.
well, I was
Somebody leaked it.
not very happy about that
Yeah,
because
of
it
course.
wasn't.
We're shocked that the Red Sox
Well,
are
you
trying to
had
manipulate the
a
media.
you had a great gig.
Well,
right?
part of the reason was because I've got such a great relationship with my old boss in Pittsburgh. I knew that if it got in the papers, he's going to get inundated.
Yeah.
So I wanted it to be the right time for them. These are things that you got to think about too. But I just think that it was the right time, and it's great. And Joe Castiglione has been wonderful to work with. I knew Joe beforehand anyway, and just getting to travel with him and hear his stories and spend time with him and go eat. He by the way, he doesn't eat at restaurants whose names don't end in a vowel.
Oh, of
Just-
course.
just
No,
so-
he's all the time. Did he, when did he start with the Red Sox?
He is entering his 36th year.
Yeah, I remember being in college.
1986
Yeah,
he started.
he,
83.
They
83,
did
yeah.
remember there was a game in '86 when Tom Seaver came back to the Red Sox and we beat the White Sox by like 25-6 or something. And for whatever reason, I remember Castiglione announcing that game way back when we were.
Yeah, he was
teenagers,
with
basically.
Ken Coleman. I
was.
remember that to
Amazing.
begin with.
He was.
Yeah.
All right, so you have a tough task as a radio announcer because we love the Red Sox and we're season ticket holders, but the games are too damn long. Now they just are. I mean, and I'm
Especially
talking
if
about
you
our
gotta get to
generation.
Nashville, New Hampshire.
That's right.
How are
You're not
you
offending me
filling?
by saying
How are you filling in this time, especially when they go to replay? Are you going? Do you go to commercial? I mean, how are you dealing with this 4-hour marathon on a Tuesday night in May?
I will tell you this: as baseball evolves, the broadcast evolves. You mentioned replay. 2009, 2010, there wasn't replay. Then I think it was 11. I think it was home runs and boundary calls only, and then they expanded it after that. And I remember going to being on like webinars and getting packets from MLB to educate myself on, because if you're going on the air, you better know the rules. So I learned all the rules of replay, and each year you got to learn something new about it. But it takes time. But as far as the broadcast goes, the worst one about replay is when there's 2 outs, because
You could be going to commercial
Bringing
or
everyone back.
well, yeah. So you have to tap dance until you see them go, no, we're not going to replay, because the manager has 30 seconds, roughly.
Yeah, but we know
to
that
decide.
doesn't right.
Right. So we sort of now you're ready to take it to break. Now you got to kind of hit the brake a little bit and figure out what's going on down there. And you can tell by the hand signals, you can tell by the body English after a while what's going to happen. But then again, you don't know what the call's going to be from New York. We see the replays in the booth, and we can tell people we're looking at the replay now. This is what we're seeing. Right. We think he's going to be safe. We think he's going to be out. So that's how you kind of kill that. But at the same time, you're doing play-by-play of the event. So you have to say what is happening at that time for the most part.
And you're trying to retain your audience. So are you trying to create some kind of drama in the fourth inning? You know what I mean?
You got to get them to the commercial.
You know what I mean? On a play to first base, do we really need the next 5 minutes to decide this?
We often wonder that.
It's a very diplomatic response.
We got to get through 54 of these outtakes.
Let's try to
before
not
we go
get
home.
him fired.
No.
I think last year with the extra innings games the Red Sox had most in baseball. I think it was like 6 or 7 extra games they would have played with the extra innings, and I believe they had the longest average game time of anybody. The thing I like about this year, or I hope I see this year, is when Alex Cora got the job as manager, he talked about being aggressive in attack counts.
Early in the count. Yeah.
So an attack count 2-1, 3-1, things like that. But an attack count from the 6th, 7th inning on can be 0-0 if you've got one of those hard-throwing guys coming out of the bullpen, and the Yankees have a couple of those. So, they're going to try to beat you with a fastball. You know this guy's going to try to beat you with a fastball. Why let him throw the first one over the plate?
Dustin Pedroia.
Well, Dustin Pedroia, Mookie Betts, and Xander Bogaerts were 3 players in the top 10 of fewest swings at a first pitch in an at-bat. The Red Sox had the lowest percentage as a team at 21% of the time. They swung at the first pitch of an at-bat.
And the
Hopefully that
all
changes.
Adjusted to that, and they just groomed it every time.
Well, you talk to I learned from a former Red Sox manager who'd been around other teams, and I had the opportunity to work with him later in his life before he passed away. But Dick Williams told me that the best pitch in the book is strike one. He said, forget curveball. He said, strike one. You get ahead, 0-1. He said, that's the best pitch in the book. Now that changes everything. Yeah. So guys are up there taking strikes. Now it's 0-1, and now the pitcher's in control. The catcher can go with a couple of different options here. So I'm hopeful that they'll be more aggressive at the plate, especially since they did not do well in the home run category. Maybe they can do better in the doubles category, because that's what John Farrell used to tell me. This is a team built for doubles, and
that's a rough way to make a living, especially when you get to the playoffs.
It is.
Got a quick other follow-up on rules question. If they implement the 20-second clock this year, there must be some rule that goes along with that for the batter, right? So the batter is going to have to be ready within that 20 seconds as well, I'd assume, because
I guess it doesn't matter. Because if he's not ready,
the guy
pitcher can just throw the pitch.
Right. So it's going to take 2 to tango. It's going to be really interesting to see the gamesmanship that goes on there.
Remember, a few years ago they put in the speed up rules where the guy's supposed to be in the box, and you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it enforced. Now guys were getting letters. I don't know if they're still getting letters. I started asking questions 3-4 years ago, and then my first year with the Red Sox, I asked John, anybody getting letters from the league? I mean, everybody's stepping out. He's like, the guys are getting letters. He goes, people just don't talk about it, and the media doesn't think about it, so they don't ask.
Yeah.
I said, all right. So I guess some guys are still getting notified or warned. I don't know if they're still getting fined or not, because this is a story that nobody talks about, nobody writes about, but that rule is in place. And that rule needs to be enforced, and a lot of times you don't see the umpire enforcing it.
You would think MLB would publicize the fact that they're fining people if they want the punishment to.
Yeah.
We saw umpires stopping the game and looking over to the manager and giving him as much time as possible to make a decision if they wanted to review it. Completely against the rule of
and see, the thing, there's so much. Like, I have my own opinions, but I know that, this year they're changing the phones in the dugout. You guys know that?
No.
Yeah. So Major League Baseball is putting in the phones, and they're going to be recording.
No cell phones?
No, they're going to be recording all
and listening in,
conversations.
right?
Yes.
Listening into
Are you
conversations.
kidding
all
me?
conversations from the dugout
Really?
to the video guy to upstairs to so they're to the bullpen. They're all going to.
Well, I'm going to be listening for Tim's first call of the automatic ball upon a 20-second clock. I'm gonna be really tuned in. You're going to have to work that call out
There's
in
a
your
30-second clock in baseball, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Between
Oh, yeah, that was a
no,
joke.
That's
Between
for the
batters, right?
pitching coach. When the pitching coach goes out, look at the big clock.
Yeah.
Okay, 30 seconds.
We've seen that.
We see the clock,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, you're right. There's nothing punitive about it.
No.
They don't do anything. They just come out. Umpire claps his hands, says, "Let's go."
Yeah.
And then the
And they're
pitching
like,
coach
"Oh, okay."
continues to talk, and they're like,
And
okay.
Tequila's playing on the organ.
Yeah.
But you got,
Yeah, that's right. We heard a lot of that,
but
right?
if you have an infielder come in, one of the guys is, it's his job to say, "Here he comes."
Oh, sorry.
So
That's great.
then
That's
they-
why Xander comes out, I think.
Yeah,
a lot
so
of the time.
watch how many times the umpire comes out, and as soon as he gets to the mound, the pitching coach is spinning away and going back.
That's
to
great.
Happens all the time.
All right, so we talked about each. So obviously you were there for the last year, Big Papi, and then this year, the Big Papi shadow. How much did it cast upon this team this year? Because it felt like the Red Sox and the players on the Red Sox never got over
Yeah,
his departure.
The shadow was so big, I'm surprised any flowers grew with the lack of photosynthesis.
Man, I gotta
I
tell
mean,
ya.
it was amazing to see the whole Big Papi Palooza go on throughout the whole course of the season.
Yeah.
The end of the season, 3 straight days of it, into the postseason. This guy was exhausted. He was exhausted. He stayed away from spring training last year purposely because he knew if he showed up, he'd be a story. This year he's going to be around, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I'm sure it's going to be wonderful now that he's been away from it for a season.
Do you get to have a relationship with the players now that you travel with them?
Some you do. Some, I mean, I'll be quite honest, some don't care that you're around at all, and some do, which I think is probably more here in the bigger markets than in some of the smaller markets. But yeah, you have relationships with players. I've got relationships with players all over baseball, and I built some here with some of the Red Sox players, and some guys know you to say hi. Some other guys will talk to you. Some other guys will pull you aside and chat about, college football or the kids or something. So, some relationships, and you have those with coaches too and staff members, that because you spend so much time in the same place, you're in the dugout, you're on the plane with them, you're in the
Same
hotel.
hotel?
Oh yeah. You travel with them, from start to finish.
The in terms of the Ortiz shadow, do you think they could find, if they don't sign Martinez or somebody, they've got to find 30 to 40 home runs in this lineup, right?
Yeah.
Can it be done? I mean, could you see 30 home runs more from essentially the same lineup as last year?
I think you're going to see a few more from Bogaerts because remember when he got hit in the hand last year, he wasn't the same guy after. He came back too early. He didn't miss enough time to get that thing healed, and he just wasn't right. He started chasing pitches and trying to make something happen, go the other way. It didn't work out. So I think he's probably going to have a bigger number. What more can you ask out of Mookie Betts? If he gives you what he gives you, that's great because what he gives you is great. Hanley Ramirez left, I can't even tell you how many guys on base last year.
It's tough to watch.
He had shoulder surgery right after the season. He's healthy this year. He says things are going to be different. And I think people hope that's the case because
believe it when I see
he
it,
he needs to drive in runs.
Yeah.
And believe me, he's the first guy to know it. He knows it better than anybody.
Of course.
What his job is and what he has to do. And he knows he left guy. Second and third, he gets up, bases loaded, nobody out. He's not doing much. But then the home runs he hit, a lot of them were solos. Yeah. So you get a guy on base, a couple other guys on base, that changes things. So I think if you're looking for a total of 30, that might be hard to find, but I think you will have an increased number this year if they go to.
They got a whole season of
Yeah.
Devers and maybe a
How
little
about
more
that
out
guy?
of the young guys.
How about that guy?
Unbelievable.
Turning around 103 mile an hour fastball.
Oh,
That was-
we were
Chapman.
That was
right behind
insane.
home plate for that one.
That was insane.
I mean, he hits it the opposite way at Yankees. I saw Aroldis Chapman a lot in the National League. Guys never did that to him. Lefties don't do that to him.
Well, that's the hardest pitch hit for a home run since they've recorded.
Since in the StatCast era.
Going out, yeah.
You know,
going
it's
out the
funny
fastest.
if you
Yeah.
think about it. He was so young and so good. We've got another guy in another sport, Jason Tatum, so young, so poised, so good. I mean, we're lucky to have guys at that age in this
Yeah.
market who are so good.
Yeah.
So who's the leader of the Boston Red Sox?
Well, I think the leader is the elder statesman. I think it's Dustin Pedroia. I think it is. I think last year was an odd year for a number of reasons in terms of, I think fan perception, even media perception of things going on in the clubhouse or not going on in the clubhouse.
Is he a willing participant to be the leader?
I think so.
Yeah, you think so?
I think absolutely he is. I mean,
What did you think of the Baltimore incident?
I was.
You mean when he was on the top
Yeah,
step? verbalizing to the.
He's-
Clearly, he knew there was a camera on
You
him.
could read his lips, saying it's not me, it's them. To what, that was a weird thing. I think the thing that made the biggest statement was Chris Sale when he came out and threw behind him.
Yeah.
Right.
That kind of put it to bed at that point in time. And I'm not really sure, because I've never talked to Dustin about that, but I'm not really sure what exactly was going through his head. Because you got to remember, what you see on television, what you hear on the radio, what you read about is not always what is really happening with the guys in uniform. And we're there every day. And when we see something happen, we have to ask after the fact, like, why did you do that? Or why would you do? And then they tell you and you're like, oh, okay. So you had this matchup number, for this guy. There's just things that people don't know.
Yeah.
And the players know because they go over it pregame. They go over it during the game in the dugout. You can have iPads in the dugout and you get all the information now, readily available. So I just think that in that case, I haven't had a chance to discuss it with him. So I don't know what was going through his head at that point.
But he pulled the curtain. We got to see.
Yeah.
We got to see the
Yeah.
wizard. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Is it that he's so immune to the fact that someone's always looking at him, that he forgot that there was a camera watching him?
I think so, maybe, and I also think that there are some unwritten rules in baseball. Okay, he got hit by a pitch. Now Machado gets hit by it, or thrown at, didn't get hit.
By the way, to this day,
Got
the
thrown
only
at.
people who got hit by pitches were Red Sox.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Not one person on Baltimore got hit by a pitch.
That's very true. And when you look at, Matt Barnes gets suspended.
Suspended.
Yeah.
And then later in the season, Dylan Betances hits a guy in the head after warnings.
Totally.
Drilled him.
And he's back, nothing happened to him. Not a thing, which I didn't get. I did not get that at all. I mean, Barnes didn't even hit him.
Didn't even hit. No, we didn't hit anybody.
No.
Well,
so-
Joe Torre was an ex-Yankee manager. So.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, you had that Erod fouled that up. It was just It was just
Yeah.
a perfect storm of.
I think so. And a lot of times a player, in the past, players I've talked to who've been hit by a pitch, they might go down, walk down to the dugout and just look at the pitcher, and that's all he needs to do to tell him, hey, you get a chance. You got to get some retribution. We don't know if Dustin did
don't know
that,
what
and maybe
happened,
he didn't, and maybe that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
But he didn't. A lot of times you don't have to, because he's perceived as the elder statesman. He's like the next in line to be the leader. He got hit, so Barnes took it upon himself to throw behind Machado, I guess.
It was a bad look for all of us.
It was bad optic.
So, all right, I want to love David Price. I really do, okay? So it's year 3, and of course I thought, he made a great comeback in the playoffs, and, he proved that he can pitch for the Boston Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
What does he need to do to enamor himself to the fans?
Just take Al Davis's advice. Just win.
Yeah.
Just
I
win,
think
baby.
that's right.
That's
all
it.
we ask.
Because look, he, all that stuff that was in the papers last year, his whatever incidents they were, he comes out of the bullpen in the playoffs and people are standing and clapping.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He strikes guys out. People are on their feet.
He's a great pitcher.
All he has to do is do what he's done to get himself here, pitch and win, and that's all people care about.
John Lackey benefited from that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
his name was Mud. We were hooting him off the mound, and he came back and was a World Series hero.
Yeah,
And-
but again, it's what you do
won.
between the lines.
yeah.
And if you're not going to, if you make it public, you're not going to speak to the media, or you're not going to talk, whatever. Who cares?
Right.
Really? I mean, that's your prerogative. The collective bargaining agreement says you must make yourself available for a reasonable amount of time. That's the wording.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you determine is reasonable, after he pitches, he talks. That's reasonable. He doesn't have to talk the other 4 days. Nobody cares. I mean,
Right.
you just get prepared, go out, and win your next start. That's all people care about. And we as New Englanders, I mean, you look at this franchise, right? All you care about is winning.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. David Price is not the biggest superstar in town.
No.
All we want him to do at this point is to contribute.
He could be managed better, though. I thought, that Farrell was managing for his job last year. He was really pushing that staff a little harder than he could have. I thought Sale could have. Pomerantz needed more rest. Price obviously needed more rest and needed to be regulated some way.
Price had a lot of rest. He did.
But not
right.
at the right time.
No,
you know
because
what I mean?
I've never seen it. be such a big deal where people were going down on the field watching his simulated games at 3:30 in the afternoon like it was a major event. I'm like,
Is he throwing off a mound or
He's
not?
throwing off a mound. Or what's the deal with David today? Oh, he's doing 120 feet on flat ground. Well, that's good. It's not bumpy ground. I mean, you know, but this is the language of recovery in the back to pitch program, the return to pitch program, and you know, you have to be patient with it because of the way that pitchers are. You have to make sure that they're healthy and everything about them has time to recover and then go back and pitch hard again. So he had one of the longest return to pitch programs I can remember ever seeing. But again, we don't know how he feels.
You know, that's the thing that
you don't know how he feels.
I don't like when the media speculates on, you know, guys should be playing with this as if every separated shoulder or every, you know, pulled muscle is the same as every other separated.
It's not football.
No, it's
this
not.
is every day.
Absolutely.
This is every day. If you played football every day, I mean, you'd have guys that last 2 seasons maximum, if that. But so they play once a week. They have time to recover. Then they get you know, whatever. But with baseball, it's every day. That's why there's a pace to it.
What should we be looking for in terms of Sale this year? We've heard stories about, you know, ideas that they have for managing him.
Well, I think if he comes up with fewer than 300 strikeouts, that should be a good thing. The 300 strikeouts plus last year was good. He's going after Pedro's record. But he was awesome to watch.
Yeah.
He was amazing to watch.
A little more efficiency wouldn't be bad either, though.
Well, I think if he can pitch to contact a little bit more, the one thing you got to realize about him is he changes speeds a lot on his fastball because that's part of his game. He'll throw a get me over. He gets ahead 0-2, not 0-2 like if he gets if there's for example, if there's a one pitch out in front of him, next pitch you're going to get an automatic strike. He'll throw a get me over fastball, try to get ahead. Sometimes that's been hit on him, not that often. So you get ahead 0-1, right? But if he just gets more ground ball outs, you know, let the fielders do some work. When you're striking guys out, you're throwing a lot of pitches to do it.
Yeah.
You know, make something happen in 3 pitches or less.
Yeah.
If you can do that, then he's going to be fine in September. Yeah. He is going to be just fine. He'll cruise. But he's always been that strikeout pitcher because he can be.
Right.
He's amazing.
Would they say in Bull Durham the ground balls are more democratic?
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
Well, to wrap up the show, you have to give us your prediction on the Red Sox. How many wins this season?
Well, since it's as far as we know, as we talk right now, it's the same team going into spring training. I'd say 93 wins.
And what about the Patriots? You got a sense?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't they win?
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Always
gonna be
seem
close.
to.
probably win by 3 or 7.
Yeah.
All right.
So
that's where I am.
That's
too.
the way they
we'll
are.
get to that later.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Tim for being on the show tonight. I want to thank, of course, the boys. I want to thank everyone behind the scenes. Of course, the lovely and talented Adrian and handsome Todd. Please check us out on our website at thegrandstanders.com and wickedlocal.com. And tune in again next Wednesday night at 6:30 for another edition of the Grandstanders Live. I'm your host, Scott Kerman. Have a great and happy night. Have a great and happy night. The elephants are in town.
Here comes the circus.